The transcript of Hutchinson's September 14, 2022, interview with the committee, which took place after she testified publicly, was released Thursday by the panel. It details post-election conversations that Hutchinson described, where multiple people said Trump acknowledged he had lost but was unwilling to concede. Hutchinson testified that Meadows told her on November 18, 2020, that Trump has pretty much acknowledged that he's lost, the transcript says. A lot of times he'll tell me that he lost, but he wants to keep fighting it, and he thinks that there might be enough to overturn the election, Meadows told Hutchinson that day about Trump, according to her retelling of the conversation. Hutchinson also testified that in late December 2020, Meadows lamented to her that Trump would get upset anytime he mentioned the transition, telling the committee that Meadows said something to the effect of, "He's just so angry at me all the time I can't talk to him about anything post-White House without him getting mad that we didn't win." Later in the interview, Hutchinson told the committee she spoke with Meadows immediately after a call with Georgia officials on January 2, 2021, where Trump pushed officials to help overturn the election results there. He said something to the effect of, "He knows it's over. He knows he lost. But we are going to keep trying. There's a chance he didn't lose. I want to pull this off for him," Hutchinson said, recounting what Meadows told her about Trump. Hutchinson doubles down on testimony about Trump fighting with security detail. In a September 15 deposition, Hutchinson echoed her testimony that she heard about Trump fighting with his security detail on January 6, according to another deposition transcript. During that public hearing, she said she heard the story from Tony Ornato, who was serving as Deputy White House Chief of Staff at the time. But after her public hearing and the avalanche of pushback, Hutchinson said she had no doubts about her previous testimony. "I have no doubts in the conversation that I had with Mr. Ornato on January 6. I have no doubts in how I've relayed that story privately and publicly," Hutchinson said, according to the transcript, which was released Thursday. "I have no doubts about the two instances on January 19 and April 16 about the conversation," Hutchinson added. In the April 16 call, Hutchinson described a phone conversation to committee investigators where Ornato made a comment like, "It could be worse. The president could have tried to kill, he didn't say kill. The president could have tried to strangle you on January 6. Hutchinson acknowledged that Ornato did not specify he was referring to the incident on January 6, but she said, "I assumed from the context of our phone call and from the conversations that we had while still at the White House that he was referencing that incident. I have no reason to believe that he was referencing any other incident." In June, Hutchinson publicly testified that Ornato told her about an altercation between the former president and the head of his Secret Service detail when he was told he could not go to the Capitol on January 6. The committee wrote in its report summary, which was released Monday, that they were unable to get Ornato to corroborate Hutchinson's testimony about the alleged altercation in the presidential SUV. The committee summary said both Hutchinson and a White House employee testified to the committee about the Ornato conversation. But Ornato professed that he did not recall either communication, and that he had no knowledge at all about the president's anger.
U.S. believes Wagner mercenary group is expanding influence and took delivery of North Korean arms. The group recently took delivery of arms from North Korea, a top U.S. official said, a sign of its growing role in the war in Ukraine. And the U.S. believes Wagner could be locked in a power battle with the Russian military itself as it jockeys for influence with the Kremlin. In certain instances, Russian military officials are actually subordinate to Wagner's command, said John Kirby, the Strategic Communications Coordinator at the National Security Council. It's pretty apparent to us that Wagner is emerging as a rival power center to the Russian military and other Russian ministries. The revelations about the Wagner Group came a day after Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky's historic visit to Washington, where he thanked the United States for its military assistance and said more was needed to fend off Russian advances. Wagner has emerged as a key player in the 10-month conflict. The group is often described as President Vladimir Putin's off-the-books troops. It has expanded its footprint globally since its creation in 2014, and has been accused of war crimes in Africa, Syria, and Ukraine. On Wednesday, the U.S. applied new restrictions on Wagner's access to technology exports. Kirby said the U.S. estimates Wagner currently has about 50,000 personnel deployed inside Ukraine, of which 40,000 could be convicts recruited from Russian prisons. He said the group was spending $100 million per month to fund its operations in Ukraine. The group's founder, Yevgeny Prigozhin, has even traveled personally to Russian prisons to recruit convicts himself to go to the front lines and fight. Some of them suffer from serious medical conditions, Kirby said. It seems as though Mr. Prigozhin is willing to just throw Russian bodies into the meat grinder in Bakhmut. In fact, about 1,000 Wagner fighters have been killed in the fighting in just recent weeks, and we believe that 90% of those 1,000 fighters were, in fact, convicts, Kirby said. Prigozhin, who has sometimes been referred to as Putin's chef, already has close ties to the Russian president. But Kirby suggested he was working to strengthen those ties through his efforts to bolster Russian forces through his mercenary recruitment. It's all about how good he looks to Mr. Putin, and how well he's regarded at the Kremlin, he said. In fact, we would go so far as to say that his influence is expanding. Last month, Wagner received a delivery of infantry rockets and missiles from North Korea, Kirby said, an indication of how Russia and its military partners continue to seek ways around Western sanctions and export controls. Prigozhin said Thursday that Kirby's claims that his group took weapons deliveries from North Korea are nothing more than gossip and speculation. Everyone knows that it's been a long time since North Korea has supplied weapons to the Russian Federation, Prigozhin said in a statement published on his Telegram channel. And no other such attempts have even been made. Therefore, these arms deliveries from the DPRK are nothing more than gossip and speculation.
Senate passes $1.7 trillion government funding bill that overhauls U.S. election law. The Senate voted Thursday to pass a $1.7 trillion government funding bill, sending it to the House to avoid a holiday shutdown. The vote was 68-29 on sweeping legislation that would keep the government funded through next fall and overhaul election laws in an attempt to prevent another January 6. It came after votes on a potpourri of amendments, including landmark workplace protections for pregnant and breastfeeding employees. The bill also includes nearly $45 billion in aid to Ukraine after President Volodymyr Zelensky said at a joint meeting of Congress that U.S. support is crucial in helping it fend off Russian aggression. The package includes $9 billion for weapons and more than $15 billion in economic and humanitarian aid. A lot of hard work, a lot of compromise. But we funded the government with an aggressive investment in American families, American workers, American national defense, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, DNY, told reporters moments after the legislation passed. It's one of the most significant appropriations packages we've done in a really long time. The bill now heads to the House, which has one more day to pass it before a government shutdown at midnight Friday. After it passes the House, the legislation goes to President Joe Biden, who has indicated he will sign it into law. Hours after Senate passage, House Majority Leader Steny Hoyer, DMD, said the chamber would aim to pass it Friday. The legislation has divided the Republican Party, with Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell of Kentucky endorsing it and House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy of California pushing to torpedo it as he courts right-wing votes to become Speaker. "This is an impressive outcome for the Republican negotiators," McConnell said, praising the bill's defense spending increases relative to domestic non-defense funding as a victory for the GOP. The bill overcame a last-minute snag late Wednesday over a GOP-demanded amendment to keep the Trump-era Title 42 border policy in place. Democrats agreed to hold a vote on their amendment alongside a Democratic alternative. Both failed, and the delicate coalition for the bill stayed intact. Other amendments were approved. After a years-long fight, senators approved including the Pregnant Workers Fairness Act as part of the omnibus package, offering protections against discrimination for pregnant workers. The last-ditch effort was led by Sens. Patty Murray, D. Wash, Richard Burr, RNC, Bill Cassidy, R. and Bob Casey, D. Pa. For far too long, too many workers excited about welcoming a new baby had to worry about losing their jobs, all because their employers could deny them basic, low-cost accommodations like a bathroom break or a stool to sit on, Murray said in a statement, calling the measure a big and important step forward. Another bill to expand accommodations for pumping in the workplace also passed as part of the tranche of amendments, cementing another victory for pregnant women and new moms. It was offered by Sens. Jeff Merkley, D. Orr, and Lisa Murkowski, R. Alaska. In a statement, Murkowski called the amendment's passage good progress toward ensuring no mother ever has to choose between a job and nursing her child. The omnibus bill moved forward 75-20 in the Senate on Tuesday, overcoming staunch opposition from conservative Republicans to win the 60 votes necessary to ensure passage. Before the final vote Wednesday, the Senate defeated a series of amendments that GOP members had demanded in exchange for dropping their threats to drag out the bill for days. One of those opponents, Senator Mike Lee of Utah, pushed back against McConnell's view. "I don't understand how that's a big win for Republicans," he said. "I do think this is harmful to Republicans. We have a Republican leader in the House and a Republican leader in the Senate taking diametrically opposed positions. And I'm with McCarthy on this one." GOP leaders in the House are pressuring members to vote against the bill, which will have to rely on mostly Democratic votes to pass. The office of House Minority Whip Steve Scalise, R.La., told Republicans the bill was designed to sideline the incoming Republican House majority by extending many programs for multiple years, and criticized its large funding increases for Democratic priorities. The legislation also includes a rewrite of an 1887 federal election law to close loopholes that then-President Donald Trump and his team sought to exploit on January 6, 2021, to make it harder for presidential candidates to steal elections. It would also grant extra funds to the Justice Department for January 6 prosecutions. Schumer said the election measures in the bill would preserve our democracy for generations to come. Trump said it was probably better to reject the election changes. "I don't care whether they change the Electoral Count Act or not. Probably better to leave it the way it is so that it can be adjusted in case of fraud," he wrote on his social media platform, arguing that the desire in Congress to clarify the law validates his belief that the vice president had the power to overturn the 2020 result. Proponents of the changes say that the 1887 law is poorly written and that it was never intended to give the vice president such power, and that the new legislation would make that abundantly clear. "It's going to stop the kind of stuff we saw on January 6, where a sitting president tried to take the election and become dictator of this country," Sen. John Tester of Montana, a moderate Democrat, said Wednesday on MSNBC's Morning Joe. "It's an important piece of legislation that was worked on in a bipartisan way.